Sometimes I think Gears of War as a franchise is in almost an impossible position. And what I mean is, the game itself isn't necessarily accessible for the average gamer. Someone who's playing Call of Duty is likely going to find the learning curve of a Gears of War to be really difficult. And part of that comes down to the unique cover mechanics of the game. And I think one of the problems that we've seen with Gears of War over the years in terms of growing to a wider audience is that inaccessibility has kept the game in this situation where the hardcore fans don't want that to change because it's something they love, but potential new fans are turned off by how difficult it is to jump into that game and really cater to their sensibilities for a game like Gears of War. However, with the recent open beta or the early access beta, the Coalition has attempted to do something that's pretty different, and they've attempted to evolve the series in a way that's tasteful to hardcore Gears of War fans like myself, but also make it more accessible to a wider fan base and make it feel more fluent than previous Gears of War games. And in this video, I'm going to go over those big changes and how they impact the series and why ultimately these are positive moves for the Gears of War franchise. So let's take a look. So to start, one of the biggest things about the previous Gears of War entries is that even with Gears of War 4 and 5 really refining the existing Gears of War formula, the game really took the cover shooter mechanics and just made them feel less clunky, but they were still part of what made the game feel very inaccessible in a lot of ways. And what I mean is staying in cover and then trying to calibrate when to pop out and shoot someone but still not get shot. It's an art, and it's one of the things that Gears of War fans have come to really become fond of and treat as like a staple of that series. And we saw games like Gears Judgment try to evolve that formula, but in a more casual shooter sort of way, and a lot of fans, including myself, just didn't like it. Whereas with Gears E-Day, what they've done is they've kept the same refined cover mechanics, but they've also changed it. And they've changed it by adding different tiers of cover. So you can cover super low on smaller surfaces, but you can also climb cover, which to me is probably one of the biggest changes. Being able to climb cover and hop over somebody and shoot at them as they're trying to hide from you changes the dynamic in a way that makes a ton of sense and has, in a lot of ways, I'm surprised didn't happen sooner in the Gears franchise. But it also makes it feel just a little bit more accessible. Now, I will highlight, the game still has a learning curve, and you're not going to come into this playing a Call of Duty and immediately you're a masterful, gamer at Gears of War E-Day. But the combination of streamlining and advancing the cover system, as well as also changing some of the fire centering, has made this, in my opinion, probably the most accessible Gears to date, but also still very tasteful to previous Gears of War players like myself. And what I mean is this: the previous Gears games, it felt like your center line for where your shotgun landed, which is like the staple weapon in Gears of War, was always kind of off. And so it felt like you were really trying ultra hard to always time that shot perfectly when you got up close to somebody. And in some cases, it led to a very frustrating experience. And in Gears 5, for example, it's in some cases almost, I wouldn't say it feels random, but it feels like if your timing is not 100% perfect, you're almost out of luck and you end up getting shot and killed before anything can even happen. Whereas with Gears E-Day, it feels like that's tightened up. And maybe saying the center being tightened up isn't exactly the right term, but it feels like your spread has a bit more room for error. And this adds to a level of that accessibility, because it doesn't feel like now you have to be this elite gamer at the game. It feels like you just need to be able to aim well enough to be able to actually have some success at this game. Because one of the things to me about Gears that really kept it in this position where it's like they had this high barrier of entry was that you'd have such a huge disparity between guys who've been playing excessively, able to capitalize on guys who didn't play excessively. And you'd see that reflected in just even game scoreboards where you have guys who just can't get off a single kill in a round. And unfortunately, those players tend to just drift from the series entirely. And unfortunately, that has led to the series not growing in the way that it could have, like a Halo has or even a Call of Duty has. And by having this changed a bit and having this spread basically have less room for error, really makes the game feel not just more accessible, but generally, in my opinion, makes it feel a lot more fun. The other big thing is Gears has always had similar modes to this, but the Conquest mode, which is very much like a Hardline and Call of Duty, is something that is, in my opinion, it's the mode that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did. And it's a mode where essentially you're just holding different zones for as long as you can versus the other team. And if you hold enough of the zones, you end up winning the match. That round, as far as just hopping in and casually playing, to me is the type of mode that Gears of War needs more of to kind of attract a wider audience and really help build a better fan base versus a team deathmatch or even a free-for-all that they've had in the previous entries. Now, I like team deathmatch, but team deathmatch, I feel like I have to play with full focus and really be dialed in because there still is, I'm not going to tell you this is a perfectly accessible game for the average gamer, but there still is a level of understanding the mechanics of this game innately that make playing team deathmatch something that still takes a lot more skill versus Conquest. And I like the idea that the Coalition is experimenting and playing with both, mixed with that new cover mechanics system and the less room for air, or the higher room for error, I guess, with the shotgun. That's making the series feel like it's taking, in my opinion, the logical next step into how this franchise should be moving if it wants to continue having more entries in the future. And so these are basically reflections of the first handful of days that the early access beta has been out. But I ultimately am very satisfied with what the Coalition is doing with this latest entry of Gears E-Day, and I'm super excited to play the next stream of beta testing that they have, and of course, the final release of Gears E-Day.